Life and faith, the two are intimately connected. For more than 2 decades, Life and Faith Television has painted pictures and told stories of faith journeys here in southwestern Ontario. Join us now as we continue the tradition. We explore the diversity in our lives of faith and the faith of our lives.
Good morning. It's good to see you again, and welcome to our last show for this season. Today we've talked with 2 of the co-chairs of the Social Justice Ministry in the Diocese of Huron. We chat about the United Church and its future with a 35-year veteran minister. And lastly, we sit down with Glenn Pearson, who shares with us how the demographics of those utilizing the London Food Bank have changed. One of the many ministries within the Diocese of Huron is the Ministry of Social Justice Huron. There are 3 co-chairs for this ministry: the Reverend Christine Brouillard-Coyle, the Reverend Margaret Walker, and the Reverend Tom Patterson. Keith Nethery caught up with Christine and Margaret to learn a little bit about their work. Let's listen in on their conversation.
So Chris, first, if you can just give us some background, how this committee came into being, how it's structured, who belongs, and those kinds of things.
Well, it actually came into being out of one of the synods more recently. That synod asked that we do something as a diocese around social justice, and so word was put out throughout the diocese for invitations for those who would like to be involved, and then the bishops picked the 3 of us to chair this group. We got together, decided how to proceed from there, and based on recommendations and interests, we made every effort to incorporate people from throughout the diocese.
Margaret, what are some of the projects that you have been involved in, some of the things you'd like to do, dreams, aspirations?
We've engaged in a number of projects in the last 2 years. We've only been in existence for 2 years now. One was with the Social Assistance Review, providing comments to that panel from a variety of constituents around the diocese. We've been engaged in providing bulletins to raise people's awareness across the diocese on issues such as the 16 days to end violence against women. We've put out calendars for various social justice-based meditations through Lent, and to raise the awareness of people about elections and the social justice issues that are that need to be taken into consideration in people's votes. We're not trying to push a particular party, but to raise people's awareness to ask the right questions of the candidates in their area.
Chris, maybe you can give us some of the dreams and aspirations, where you see this ministry going.
Well, we particularly like the idea of the Renew campaign as being a way to challenge parishes to explore who we are as Christians, and that as we're doing that, to recognize that fundamental to who we are is that we reach out. If we're to follow the new commandment, as we heard on Monday, Thursday, to love as Jesus loved, then that means we have to reach out to all the people in our areas, to inform ourselves on what they need, to advocate to ensure that all people are able to live fully who they were created to be, and to mobilize to make a difference in our communities.
What are some of the things that you've learned in participating in this ministry?
I've learned that there are so many people across this diocese that are so incredibly generous with their time, their talent, and their treasure, and so inventive in the ways that they've found a way to service people. They've gone out and they've actually looked to find out what the issue is that is holding people back, or where there is a problem, and found a very creative way to help them in the best way they can with whatever gifts the parish or the community has to help these people.
Chris, did you want to add something to that about learnings?
Well, you know what, I think that's captured it very beautifully, that to recognize that we have this abundance of generosity, of gifts, of willingness to engage, and the creativity which with people respond, from handing out skates to people who want to experience a natural Canadian pastime, to dealing with drug addicts and providing dental care. Because even in Canada, if people don't have good teeth, they can't be healthy, and it affects their self-esteem and their ability to get jobs. And we've got programs where people are right on the ground and supporting people and enabling people to take advantage of what's available to them and be the best that they can be. And to hear those stories is just, it's life-giving for all of us.
Scott Boyce joins us now, and Scott, early in 2012, you had quite an adventure on a medical mission to Nicaragua. Tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Well, back in the early summer of 2011, my pastor, Lauren Mitchell, told me about the trip that was going to be done through an organization called Friends of the Orphans Canada. A few months later, I was off on a plane early February down to Jinotepe, Nicaragua, where the orphanage was.
So you're not a medical person, but you got to experience some things. What did you end up doing?
Well, the first night we were there, before the first clinics we had, the team leader we had, Jean Aitchison, asked if I'd be willing to clean the teeth of the children and give them fluoride treatment and whatnot, and I said, sure, I'll do that. I'm here to do whatever is asked of me and help out however I can.
Tell me how this trip has changed your life, changed your outlook on the world, changed your outlook on structures of justice and things like that.
It certainly made me appreciate what I have in Canada and take for granted, like having clean teeth. It's not something that I give much thought to, but I've thought about it a lot more since then. Basic Medicare in general, because that was the focus of the mission. I mean, there were things that I think some of the doctors had never seen before, certainly things I've never seen before or even heard of before.
Would you go back again?
Absolutely. We didn't get to spend a lot of time with the kids because when we weren't at a clinic at the orphanage, we were at a clinic in the local community. So not everybody got to spend some time with the really young ones. There were a couple of the translators that I worked with, and even in the short time that I was there and I worked with them, I grew very close to and very attached to, and even if I could just go and see a few of those kids again, that would be fantastic. But it was an incredible experience and I would love to go again.
Kevin Dixon, the Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral, very much involved in social justice, has been throughout your time in ministry. Start by telling us what social justice means to you.
Well, thanks, Keith. There's a long history of social justice work among Christians. It finds its roots in Scripture. In the Hebrew Scriptures, we find lots of narrative that talks about God being on the side of the people who have no one else to be on their side. So it's the work of justice making to support those who are the victims of injustice.
So how's that played out in your time in ministry and some of the things that you've been involved in that have helped to shape and form you?
Well, the issues that we face today are perhaps different issues than the kind of issues that Jesus had in mind. In some instances, they're not different. One involvement that I had when I was working in Vancouver was with regard to drug policy in the Vancouver area, and trying to encourage the system to recognize that illicit drug use is primarily a health issue and not a criminal issue. Treating people who are addicted as criminals rather than people who are ill is in itself an injustice and an indignity. More recently here in London, I've been involved in questions related to economic disparity, and in that regard had some involvement with the efforts of the Occupy movement to draw attention to the growing gap between rich and poor.
And one of the things that I've noticed, and I guess it's a benefit of this, is that it brings groups together, Christian groups and also interfaith groups, and these are issues that are not just issues for the Christian church, and I think you've been involved in the wider perspective of an interfaith discussion. Can you talk a little bit about how that works and how we share in trying to stand together to help combat some of these social issues and problems?
In the City of London, there is a group that I helped to establish called the Multi-Faith Social Action Coalition. And that group is composed primarily of Christians, Jews, and Muslims who are especially focused on issues of economic disparity and seeking to reduce the gap. And given that we're a local group, we have the opportunity to engage in that locally. And when faith groups from different traditions all speak with one voice on a social issue, I think that it has greater credibility in the view of the general public. Also, some faith leaders are involved in another group that has formed recently called the Citizens Advocacy Panel. And this panel recently responded to the provincial government's Social Assistance Review Commission in order to garner responses from the general population of London to changes in welfare policy for the province. And those are very practical ways in which people of faith can become involved.
A look inside Social Justice Huron, a ministry of the Anglican Diocese of Huron. For Life and Faith, this is Reverend Keith Nethery.